Okay, so when you hear the word war, you probably picture soldiers, tanks, and battlefields, right? Well, the biggest conflict of our time, it's not being fought like that. It's a high-stakes, high-tech battle for control over these tiny little pieces of silicon that are literally going to shape the future of global power. This is the AI chip war.
And look, this is not just about who's making the next fastest smartphone. It's so much bigger. As this quote says, chips are the foundation of all modern weaponry. Think about it. Fighter jets, advanced drones, missile defense systems, they all run on these things. So the takeaway here is really simple. If you control the most advanced AI chips, you control the future of military strength. Period.
So what exactly are we talking about when we say AI chip war? Well, it's this incredibly intense strategic rivalry between the United States and China. Both countries see leading the world in AI chips as, well, not just a nice economic goal, they see it as absolutely crucial for their national security and their place in the world for decades to come.
All right, so where is this battle actually being fought? It's not on land or at sea. The new global battlefield is the incredibly complex and pretty fragile global semiconductor supply chain.
So let's kick things off with Team USA's playbook. Their whole strategy is often described as building a small yard with a high fence. It's a really clever, multi-layered plan, and it's all designed to make sure America keeps its technological lead.
This quote from National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, it basically sums up the entire U.S. philosophy perfectly. The yard, that's the U.S. and its close allies. The foundational technologies, we're talking about the most advanced chips, and, just as important, the tools you need to make them. And that high fence, well, that's a wall of policies built to keep those critical technologies from getting into the wrong hands.
So how do you actually build this fence? Well, it really boils down to 3 key steps. First up, deny. This means using export controls to basically cut off China's access to the most powerful chips, like the ones from NVIDIA, and the super complex machinery needed to produce them. Second, rebuild. This is where the massive $52.7 billion CHIPS Act comes in, a huge investment to bring chip manufacturing back home to the US. And third, unite. This is all about teaming up, forming alliances like the Chip 4 with the other big players, that's Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan, to control the global supply chain together.
But of course, China isn't just sitting back and watching this happen. Nope. In response to America's high fence, it has launched this incredibly ambitious, super well-funded counterattack, a plan to build its very own self-sufficient tech ecosystem. You could call it a Great Wall of Tech.
Now, the big centerpiece of this whole strategy was the Made in China 2025 plan. The goal was unbelievably ambitious, to make 70% of its own semiconductors by 2025. The reality, though, well, it fell a bit short. Now, don't get me wrong, getting to 30 or 40% self-sufficiency is a huge leap, but that gap really shows you what a monumental task it is to try and rebuild an entire global supply chain all by yourself.
China's counter-strategy is seriously aggressive, and it's coming from all sides. It starts with something called the Delete America Initiative. It's a top-down order for key industries to systematically rip out and replace foreign tech. This, of course, creates a huge domestic market, which is then filled by pouring billions into their national champions, companies like Huawei for chip design and SMIC for manufacturing. And the glue holding it all together? A military-civil fusion strategy, which means any breakthrough in commercial tech is immediately pulled over for defense purposes, all to speed up that drive for total self-reliance.
But even with all those efforts, this chart from 2024 really shows you the scale of the mountain they have to climb. Even with a national champion like Huawei cranking out its Ascend 910B chip, the American giant NVIDIA still completely dominated the Chinese market, selling 5 times as many of its specially designed H20 chips. It just goes to show you how deep America's tech advantage still is.
So how does this all play out in the real world? Let me tell you. It is not some slow, careful chess match. It's more like a chaotic storm of back-and-forth policy changes, sudden reversals, and retaliation that has left the entire global market just spinning.
I mean, just look at this dizzying timeline from 2025 alone. It's wild. In April, the US bans the sale of NVIDIA's H20 chip to China. Just 3 months later, in July, they do a complete 180 and reverse the ban. By August, they're proposing a 15% tax on those same sales. So China retaliates in September by banning its own companies from buying the chips. And then, and this is the craziest part, by December, the US strikes a new deal to sell China an even more powerful chip, the H200, in exchange for a 25% cut of the revenue. It is the perfect example of just how unpredictable this whole thing is.
And you know, this policy whiplash, it has very, very real consequences. That first ban back in April 2025 forced NVIDIA to take a staggering $4.5 billion hit in a single quarter. This wasn't just some political headline. It was a direct shot to the bottom line of one of America's most important companies.
And then, on the flip side, what do you think happened the second that ban was lifted? A flood. 700,000 orders for NVIDIA's chips poured in from China. That one number tells you everything you need to know about the massive, pent-up demand for computing power and just how reliant China's AI industry still is on American technology.
Okay, so we've seen the strategies, we've seen the chaos, but what is truly at stake here? Because the outcome of this chip war could create two completely different futures for the entire planet.
I mean, just look at how stark these differences are. If America's strategy works, it could lock in a permanent tech advantage in AI-powered defense, secure its supply chains, and basically extend its global leadership. But if China pulls it off, it could achieve military parity with the US, break America's tech monopoly, and set itself up as the new go-to technology partner for developing nations all over the world. The stakes just could not be higher.
So, which one of these futures is the most likely? Well, what the experts are predicting is an outcome that isn't really a clear victory for either side, but something a lot more complicated.
You can see here, the most likely scenario, at a 45% probability, isn't a knockout punch for anyone. It's a future of strategic coexistence. The odds of total US success, or China completely catching up, are actually lower, which suggests the future is going to be a lot more nuanced than we think.
So what does this strategic coexistence actually look like? Well, it points to what's being called a bifurcated or split world. Basically, imagine two parallel tech universes. One is led by the US and its allies, and they continue to push the absolute bleeding edge of chip technology. And the other, led by China, becomes self-sufficient and eventually comes to dominate the market for slightly older but still incredibly important mature technologies.
And that really leaves us with this final crucial question. This isn't just another trade dispute or some corporate rivalry. The AI chip war is actively creating a brand new global order, literally splitting the technological world in two. So the real question isn't about who's going to win. It's whether any of us are actually ready for the consequences of this division.